We are 7 weeks into the NFL season, and a lot has taken place in a short amount of time. There are some things we expected, like the Kansas City Chiefs still being good, and like the Detroit Lions getting off to a hot start. But there have also been some things nobody was expecting through the first 7 weeks, and I think the Washington Commanders having the success they've had is a good example. But it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for all 32 teams, not even close. And in today's video, we're going to break down the biggest concerns I have with 4 NFL teams, not just for the next couple of weeks, but for the remainder of the 2024 NFL season, and even into the 2025 offseason and beyond. One big thing to remember is that not every NFL team enters the year with Super Bowl aspirations, as let's be honest for a second. The Panthers didn't enter the 24 season just a year removed from going 2-15, thinking they were going to win 14 games and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That may have been what they said publicly, but the goal was to be a competent team and to develop second-year quarterback Bryce Young. And we bring this up because you don't have to have Super Bowl or bust aspirations to have a disappointing season. And there are a lot of concerns with the teams we're going to break down in today's video. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are 3-4 on the year after a 28-18 loss against the Chiefs in Week 7, and we mentioned it briefly during the Week 7 recap, but there's a lot of concern with this team. Having 4 losses through 7 games obviously isn't ideal, but it's even more concerning when you play teams like the Bucs, Packers, and Bills all on the road in the next few games, and there is very little margin for error. This was a team that was on thin ice entering the year with very little margin for error to begin with, and now there's been seemingly injury after injury. The Christian McCaffrey situation is obviously bad, but it's not just CMC. There is fear Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL, and that may be confirmed by the time you're watching this video, but there's several other big players that are hurt too. Javon Hargrave, who is a very good interior defensive lineman and a guy who has been to the Pro Bowl 2 times in the last 3 years, is done for the season. And sure, with how star-studded of a roster San Francisco has, Hargrave may get lost in the mix, but he signed a 4-year, $84 million contract during the 2023 offseason and is amongst the highest paid at his position. Talanoa Hufanga is on IR, and after tearing his Achilles in the Super Bowl, Dre Greenlaw is still recovering from that injury. The 49ers also have been hot and cold to start the 2024 season, and there's games where you watch this team play and think they can beat anybody, and the Seattle game in Week 6 was a prime example. They put up 36 points on the road, they had over 480 yards of offense, and they ran for over 220 yards in that game. But the Chiefs game in Week 7 was kind of a microcosm of the past few years for the San Francisco 49ers. They turned the ball over 3 times in this game, and they were all in Kansas City territory. And it happens. Every team is going to have multi-turnover games. Obviously, it stinks when it happens, but why I think this was a microcosm of their past few years is because it signified what the past few years have been for the San Francisco 49ers. They've been close time and time again, but they haven't been able to reach the mountaintop, and this is one of the concerns I have with San Francisco in 2025 and beyond. Trent Williams is 36, George Kittle is 31, Javon Hargrave is 31, and Talanoa Hufanga is in the final year of his rookie deal. No team is obviously going to last forever, but you can start to see where this franchise is headed. It's incredibly difficult to win a singular Super Bowl, and appearing in 4 conference championship games in 5 years is a very big accomplishment in itself. But my concern is this is a great team when healthy, but they're not healthy, and they're also an older team at key positions. Not only that, but one of the biggest benefits this franchise at the moment is going to go out the window very soon, and that's having good quarterback play at a fraction of the cost. Having Brock Purdy make $1 million in 2024 while other quarterbacks around the league are getting paid well over $50 million is a ticking time bomb for San Francisco, and the bill is going to be due very soon. And when the bill is due and he gets paid over $200 million, because that's a matter of when, not if, the 49ers are going to have to make a lot of difficult decisions. I thought 2023 was their best chance to win the Super Bowl, and when they didn't, I still thought 2024 was going to be a good year for them, but if they didn't do it last year, I didn't think they would do it this year. And there's a lot of concerns with the Niners moving forward, and money, age, and injuries are all major factors. We are now in late October and it's peak football season, and you can tell when you walk outside with a chill in the air, leaves on the ground, that it's football weather. And to me, that's what fall is all about. And with that, you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with my partners at DraftKings. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. That's $200 in bonus bets instantly when you sign up using my code ANALYSIS. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry, you can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. I don't know about you guys, but every weekend in the fall for me revolves around football, and if yours does too, why not spice it up and give it a shot? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use my promo code ANALYSIS to bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Once again, that's promo code ANALYSIS, and a big thank you to DraftKings, an official partner of the NFL, for sponsoring today's video. I have a lot of concerns with the New York Giants moving forward, and it starts with the offense. We'll get into more of the roster breakdown and the front office and everything within that in a minute, but guys, to give you some statistics as to how bad their offense is right now, they have recently played back-to-back home games against the Bengals in Week 6 and now the Eagles in Week 7, and they have 10 points in their last 8 quarters. They put up 7 points against the Bengals in a 17-7 loss in Week 6, and most recently, lost 28-3 to the Eagles in Week 7. They have 2 other home games this year in which they put up 6 points against the Vikings in Week 1, and then 15 points against the Dallas in a Thursday night game earlier in the year, and if you are adding all of those numbers up, you guessed it, the Giants have a grand total of 31 points in 4 home games in 2024, and this goes into my main concern with the New York Giants, not just for the remainder of 2024, but for 2025 and beyond, because, guys, as simple as this question is, what are they going to do at the quarterback position? Because it's not every offseason where you find a Sam Darnold or a Geno Smith or a Baker Mayfield. And I'm not saying Drew Lock can't eventually be one of those guys, but to hope that Drew Lock is going to turn it around after a not great start to his career in both Denver and Seattle, to me is a pipe dream at this point in time. So when you sit back and actually think, okay, what are the Giants going to do for the remainder of the 2024 season? Are they going to follow what the Browns were going to do with Deshaun Watson and ride it out with Daniel Jones because they have a lot of money committed to him? Or are they going to go with Drew Lock and say, hey Drew, try and find a genie in a bottle and good luck and make magic out of what is a completely terrible situation, outside of Malik Neighbors of course, and good luck buddy because you are going to need it. Now, what also needs to be remembered for Daniel Jones or Drew Lock for the remainder of the 2024 season is they were set up to fail against the Eagles, and they will continue to be set up to fail because of Andrew Thomas missing the rest of the season. Daniel Jones was sacked 7 times against the Eagles in Week 7, and Drew Lock was sacked 1 time. Together, they were sacked 8 times for a loss of over 60 yards of offense. Whenever a quarterback, or quarterbacks in this case, are sacked 8 times in a game, you are going to be set up for failure, and I would imagine that 95, maybe even 99% of the time, if you are sacked 8 times in a game, you are going to lose that game. So if Daniel Jones and Drew Lock predictably do not work out the way that the Giants intend, especially with a poor offensive line, as it's been clear that this Giants offensive line, even now without Andrew Thomas, is not close to league average, the question heading into the offseason is, okay, what are they going to do at the quarterback position? Because we know those two are not going to be the long-term answers. And then I think you have to go a step further and say that if the Giants finish with a top 10 pick, which by the way, I think they're going to, because when you ask the simple question of how many wins are the Giants going to have, guys, the answer is not a lot because they're simply not going to be able to outscore other teams, and we've seen that over the past 2 games. Again, 10 total points in the last 8 quarters is a good representation to show where the Giants' offense is. I think that Brian Daboll is going to also be shown the door. So we're going to have a new head coach, and I would also imagine a new GM too, as Joe Schoen has not done the best job of building this roster, and Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau with the 2 top 7 picks back in 2022 kind of shows that, especially in Evan Neal's case. I would imagine we have a new head coach and GM in a quarterback class that is not great. The quarterbacks in the 2025 class right now are guys like Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, and you get the point. They are absolutely nowhere near where the 2024 class is, and the Giants are going to enter the 2025 offseason in a very desperate situation. So when you look at the future of the New York Giants, between potentially having a new head coach and GM, a new quarterback as well, in an offseason where quarterbacks are going to be needed more than ever, and there's simply not a supply of quarterbacks, guys, I really worry about the future of the New York Giants because I simply don't have a clue as to where this is going. I also don't think they're going to start trading players like Dexter Lawrence. I know that's been discussed in social media. I don't think Dexter is going anywhere, but when you look at the future of the New York Giants, the 2025 outlook for them scares me simply because I don't know what they're going to do at the quarterback position, and they're not going to find a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes off the streets and say, okay, buddy, you're our guy for the next 10 to 15 years. The outlook for the Giants scares me at this point in time because I really don't know what the answer is, and for this reason, with the uncertainty of a quarterback, head coach, and GM entering the 2025 offseason, this situation scares me a lot. The Tennessee Titans are another team I have major concerns with, and it's for a few reasons. They have one game in 2024 in which they've put up more than 17 points, and that was during the Week 4 Monday night game against the Dolphins. Aside from that game, they have been very disappointing, and the most recent game against Buffalo was another example. Mason Rudolph started in place of an injured Will Levis, and after getting out to a 10-0 lead, they were then outscored 34-0. This was a team I was very excited to see play in 2024, and I thought they could be a legit pain in the rear end for several great teams, as long as the offense was okay. The offense didn't have to be elite or even be top 10, just as long as they were close to average, and they haven't been. The turnovers have been crucial, and they have 12 turnovers in 6 games, which ranks 31st in the NFL. They have thrown 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions in the first 6 games of the year, and not surprisingly, they have a 1-5 record. I think what concerns me the most about the Titans moving forward is they have no real direction. They have several good players on their roster, but they don't really have a plan for 2025. They play the Lions on the road in Week 8, and I think everyone would agree that they're probably going to lose that game, which would put them at 1-6. I think there's going to be questions of whether or not to keep Brian Callahan after this year too, because the final record for this team is going to be bad. I think at best at this point they'll finish 6-11, but even if they finish 6-11, is it worth having the number 9 pick and being just good enough to miss out on one of the best players in the 2025 draft class because you beat the Patriots, Jags, and win a few of the toss-up games at the end of the 2024 season? No, and hopefully for the future of the Titans, that doesn't happen. But I worry that their defense will play really well in a couple of games down the stretch and hold opposing teams to 10 or 13 points, and that the Titans will inevitably win a few too many games. This team also opted to pay Calvin Ridley this past offseason, which was a move I liked, but over the last 2 games, Calvin has been targeted 17 times and has just 3 receptions for 42 yards, which is unacceptable. Now, the main reason why I like this signing for the Titans was because their receiving room in 2023 outside of DeAndre Hopkins was truly awful, and they had to give Will Levis a chance in 2024. But at this point, I think I am out on Will Levis as the future quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. He puts the ball in harm's way more than you'd like, and the flashes he's shown are getting fewer and further between. Will Levis is also a different player under pressure, and opposing defensive coordinators know this. Under pressure, he's completed just 55% of his passes, and has thrown 3 interceptions and has a pass rating of just 40.3. When kept clean, the numbers are better, which you would rightfully expect, but there's times where Will Levis is under pressure, and that's when you get the meme plays, and your head coach saying to you on the sideline, "What the bleep are you doing?" They have a quarterback problem, and I also think they're going to be sellers at the deadline with the assets they have, and I do think DeAndre Hopkins' days in Nashville are numbered. But when you think about it, what are the Titans going to do to get this roster to the point where they're serious contenders? Because they are far from that right now, and to be honest, I don't know what the answer is. The Atlanta Falcons are next up, and there's a lot of concerns with this team, but the one that I will focus on initially is a concern I've had for this team, not just for an offseason or two, but really 4 or 5 off seasons, and honestly even further back than that, and maybe outside of a year here or there from Vic Beasley, they really haven't had a truly great pass rusher since John Abraham, and that's well over a decade ago. So right now the Falcons' leading pass rusher is Caden Ellis, as he has 14 pressures on the season, and to give you an idea of just how bad that is to be leading the team in pressures through 7 games with just 14 pressures, well, Aiden Hutchinson, who is done for the year, had a 15 pressure game against the Seahawks back in week 4. Now, it is worth noting that Hutch was on a defensive player of the year trajectory, and I think he would have been the defensive player of the year, but guys, 1 game from Hutch equals more pressures than your team leader through 7 games. We're not in week 2 or 3 anymore, guys. We are nearly midway through the year, and this is a big problem for the Falcons, and it's not just a big problem because they can't generate pressures, but it's a big problem because this team entered the 2024 season thinking, hey, we can go win a Super Bowl, or at minimum, we can go to a conference championship game for the first time in several years, and they are nowhere close to that, and it's going to be extremely difficult to do that without a legit pass rush, and I would say borderline impossible. To give you one more stat as to how bad the Falcons' pass rush is, their top 3 leaders in pressures wouldn't equate to how many pressures Aiden Hutchinson had in just 4.5 games, because remember, the Lions had a bye week before Hutch sustained his injury. These players had 7 games to accumulate pressures, and they're still not where Hutch was pre-injury. But the pass rush is not the only thing that concerns me with the Falcons moving forward, and that's been a hole that the Falcons have needed to address for, again, not just 1 offseason, not just 2, but really 5, 6, maybe 7 offseasons now that they simply have chosen not to address. One other thing that does concern me is quarterback Kirk Cousins. Kirk had a phenomenal game against Tampa, and it was one of the best games of the season so far, and it was a very, very fun game. 36-30, went to overtime. Kirk threw for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, and unless you were a Bucs or Saints fan because of the Saints-Falcons rivalry, everybody had fun watching that game. But outside of that game, Kirk has just 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions on the year, and even excluding the Panthers game against what is a team that is one of the worst, not just in this year, but in really the past 3 or 4 years, Kirk has not been good. Yes, he's shown flashes, and the drive against the Eagles back in week 2 to win the game was a good drive by Kirk and the Falcons, and even the Darnell Mooney big touchdown within that game. There's been more bad than good from Kirk in 2024, and PFF has a stat called big time throws and a stat called turnover worthy plays. A big time throw is exactly what you would think, a big time throw, and a turnover worthy play is a ball that maybe you put in double coverage, maybe a ball into triple coverage, whatever the case may be. Maybe it didn't necessarily end in an interception, but it was a turnover worthy play because the ball was put in harm's way. And for reference, Kirk has 3 big-time throws on the year, which already is not good, but he has a staggering 14 turnover-worthy plays. Yes, he has a touchdown-to-interception ratio of 10-7, and by the way, if you take that Bucs game away, he has a touchdown ratio of just 6-6 in the other 6 games, and keep in mind, one of those games was against the Panthers. So I have a lot of concerns with Kirk moving forward, and I'm not calling for him to be benched and for Michael Penix to play, but I think it is worth noting for a team that had at least NFC Championship game aspirations entering the year. Remember, the Falcons had back-to-back 7-win seasons with a hodgepodge of quarterbacks, from Marcus Mariota to Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder, and they thought by bringing in Kirk Cousins that this was going to be the final piece to propel them to a deep playoff run, but I don't think they're going to get there, not even close. The NFC North is the best division in football at the moment, and I don't think the Falcons would end up well against any of those teams, especially if they had to go on the road to either Detroit or Minnesota when it mattered. So the concerns that I have with this Falcons team are pass rush and quarterback play, and I would be eager to see how Michael Penix would consistently play, although right now he is all-time leader in NFL completion percentage with a 100% completion rate, so maybe they do have something there, and maybe Michael Penix could be a future star that will never throw an incompletion. And jokes aside, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe as we are closing in on 165,000, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.